Just getting ready to interview Senator Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, whose house they've been demonstrating outside of his house for a long time. We're just miking him up. I want to take a look at the market real fast as we head towards the opening bell. The Dow Industrials on the upside this Thursday morning. You're looking at a gain of about 173 points right now. Nice gain for the Nasdaq too, up 125. Mixed picture yesterday, a little bit more buying today. Anti-Israel agitators, they protested outside the home of Texas Senator Ted Cruz more than a dozen times in the past couple of weeks. Senator Cruz joins me now. What have these protests been like for you and your family, Senator?
Well, I got to tell you, it's been going on now for 3 months. Every Saturday morning at 7 a.m., there are anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protesters. They show up outside my house. They're screaming, they're banging cowbells, they're blowing whistles, and they're doing it to harass, to wake up. I've got two teenage daughters who are 13 and 16. They don't really appreciate being woken up early Saturday mornings. And I'll tell you, my neighbors, I've got a lot of neighbors who have young kids, and they've been harassing my neighbors as well. This last Friday, they were there Friday night until 11 p.m., one of the moms in the neighborhood went out and asked law enforcement, can you do something about it? And the protesters began screaming obscenities at these moms. It's really disturbing. And I'll tell you, Stuart, number one, it's being paid for. This is a job for these radicals. They show up every week and someone's putting real money. But number two, it's not going to succeed. My support for Israel is unshakable, and the more they scream, the less it's going to do. But this is a tiny microcosm of what we're seeing happening at college campuses across the country, where there are enormous sums of money going into funding unrest and to funding anti-Semitism and attacks on Israel right now.
There are questions as to why Biden has been silent on these protests, and he has largely been silent. Trump says, however, hey, Biden, you should speak out. Watch this, Senator.
How do you explain his silence this week?
The president has not been silent on this issue when it comes to hate speech, anti-Semitism.
He's a school building at an Ivy League campus got
and we call that out, and we said that is not peacefully protesting.
Biden should speak out. He should speak out. He should say something, because nobody knows where he is. He's definitely against Israel.
Senator, is Biden silent because he's afraid of losing voters in, say, Michigan?
Yeah, look, of course he is. Biden has been in witness protection over the last several weeks. He's terrified to say anything. If we actually had a strong president, I'll tell you what the president would do. The president would stand up and say, these protests are disgusting. They are unacceptable. This hatred of Israel, this anti-Semitism is utterly unacceptable. At Columbia University, the Orthodox rabbi emailed every Jewish student on campus and said, go home, stay home, because Columbia cannot and will not protect your safety. That is not right. And a real president would do what Dwight D. Eisenhower did when you had racist Democrats in the South refusing to protect African Americans. He sent in the National Guard. He said, we're going to protect students even if you won't. When you look at the threats that are occurring, the threats of violence, in my view, any protester that is threatening the safety of another student, that is threatening to murder Jews, and at the University of Washington, they were chanting to Jews, go back to the gas chamber. If you threaten the safety of another student, you should be arrested, you should be prosecuted, you should be expelled, and if you're a foreigner, you should be deported. And that's what real leadership would do right now.
Senator, I've got limited time, and I want to change the subject to something that's equally important. You're leading a bipartisan group of senators on a bill that would limit social media use for kids. Can you spell out exactly what kind of limits you propose?
Well, sure. I've teamed up with Brian Schatz, who is a Democrat from the state of Hawaii, and the two of us have introduced a bill to protect kids online. And in particular, it's focused on social media. It does several things. It says for kids under 13, they cannot be on social media. There's no reason for an 8-year-old, for a 9-year-old to be exposed to all of the negative pressures, to all of the attacks that occur on social media. So it protects young kids. For kids that are older, for teenagers, for anyone under 17, it prohibits big tech companies from using algorithmic boosting to push messages, addictive messages. I got to say, as I mentioned, I've got two teenage girls at home. Every parent I know, particularly if you have teenagers or you have adolescents, they're very worried about the garbage that comes in through the phones. And you look at social media that pushes negative messages to our kids, that pushes things undermining their body image, pushing self-harm, pushing suicidal ideation, pushing, by the way, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic messages. And so this prohibits algorithmic boosting. It also includes a separate bill that I authored called the Eyes on the Board bill that says in any school that receives federal funding, you have to block social media at school, that our students in school ought to be listening to the teacher and doing their schoolwork, and they shouldn't be posting on Instagram while they're in math class.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. We'd like a clear picture of exactly what you're proposing so that parents around the country can say yay or nay. Senator Cruz, always a pleasure. Thanks for being with us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stuart. Yes.